would say that anecdotally, I've kind of known that the Border Patrol itself, the agents in the United States Border Patrol, have a higher percentage rate of committing crimes than the migrants that they arrest on the southern border, at least. And I've always wanted to prove that. It's difficult to prove. For a long time, the Border Patrol did not keep or did not publicize the statistics on how many of their agents were arrested. And they most certainly, still today, they don't compare the rate of arrest of Border Patrol agents to that of the migrants that they're arresting, because they don't want you to know that. So first of all, I want to say it's very low. It's still under 1%, but so are the migrants that they're arresting. So of the migrants arrested by the Border Patrol, generally speaking, after apprehension, Border Patrol agents have to run records checks on everybody. And generally speaking, the amount of people that the Border Patrol finds crossing our border that have a previous conviction, so they're crossing illegally, that's called a re-entry after an official deportation. That's called 8 U.S.C. 1326, or in the Border Patrol, we call it 26'em. So generally speaking, the migrants that they're arresting that have prior criminal convictions are less than 1%. As are the Border Patrol agents who are arrested for crimes. So it's similar. But let's look at the statistics just to see who's committing more crimes. Is it Border Patrol agents or is it the migrants that they're arresting? One of the reasons why I know so much about Border Patrol statistics is that when I was a junior agent, when I was a training agent and the only female agent at the Campo station at the time, I ended up having to do a lot of what they called back then intelligence, but basically it was statistics. And it was because our senior patrol agents who normally do that kind of work, they at the time didn't know how to use computers. So it was that gap between the old generation of agents and the new generation of agents. And so I ended up learning all the Border Patrol statistics. And that's how I can look at these statistics and see how they show them on their website, on CBP's website, how that prevents a lot of people from looking at them and seeing the things that they don't want you to see. They only want you to see what they want you to see. So the layout that the Border Patrol and CBP uses actually they try and prevent you from trying to figure these types of things out. But essentially, since 2015, CBP and Border Patrol have had what they refer to transparency. And this is where they try and be more honest with the public about what's going on with, misconduct and agents actually committing crimes and so forth. And so they started reporting all this on their website. So I was able to then gather those statistics and then separately, obviously, find their statistics on the amount of people that they arrest that then come back with prior convictions and records, and then compare the two. Once again, CBP are the people in blue at the ports of entry, where people apply to come into the United States. People in green is Border Patrol. That's in between the ports of entry, and they're trying to catch anybody who's coming across illegally or irregularly. Illegally is when somebody tries to cross the United States border with intent to commit a crime. Irregularly is when you are an asylum seeker and you cannot get through the ports of entry and you cannot get an appointment to save your life, and you are forced to cross in between the ports of entry. That is the difference. Another thing I want to make clear is all these statistics are found on cbp.gov. These are their own statistics. So one of the reasons why CBP points out that the arrest of their agents are less than 1% is because that's the national average for law enforcement agencies. And the Border Patrol agents are arrested 5 times as much as other law enforcement agencies. So there already is this problem with the United States Border Patrol that the agency is well aware of. And this is because their hiring standards are very poor. It's also because the management does not hold people accountable. It's also because the what we call internal affairs agencies that look into Border Patrol and CBP are filled with ex-Border Patrol and CBP agents, and they ensure that agents are very rarely, if ever, held accountable. That's another podcast for another time. But if we look at the stats, okay, so this is CBP will only give out information per year. At most, they'll compare 2 years. So this is from 2015 all the way up to, you could see, 2023. For the federal government, 2023, the year ends in September. The new fiscal year always starts in October. So 2023 for the federal government is already over. This is CBP and Border Patrol combined. They're two separate agencies, but they are combined in that Border Patrol is underneath CBP. But essentially, like they said, their arrest rates of their employees versus the total incidents, and that is what gives you your percentage. What you need to know is in the last 9 years, over 2,224 CBP employees, and that includes Border Patrol agents, have been arrested for a crime. You can see the majority of them are going to be alcohol and drugs. That makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, there's a lot involving crimes against children. This includes sexual crimes. And then, of course, domestics are very high. Assaults are very high as well. So that's a look at CBP entirely. But here's something that you don't know is a lot of crimes committed by CBP and Border Patrol agents that are not serious crimes end up not on this list. And so this list is not necessarily a complete list. And I would say you should always expect it to be an undercount, is what it usually is. I think of all the categories, probably the domestic violence category is the one that is probably the most underrepresented, at least from my experience as a Border Patrol agent. I've found that the majority of domestic violence crimes committed by agents just are never reported. And when they are reported, the local cops responding often tell the agent's spouse not to file charges because it could endanger the agent's job. And when that doesn't work, the agent's supervisor a lot of times will go to the spouse and try and convince them not to file charges simply because it would hurt the image of the Border Patrol more so than the agent. It is so rampant, domestic abuse is so rampant in CBP and the Border Patrol that even the oversight investigation reports that are completed by the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Inspector General, which is like their oversight agency, they've been proven to be a severe undercount. In fact, I would suggest you check out this article called Protecting the Predators at DHS. This has been reported over and over again, and yet Congress refuses to do anything about that. I think another important category to analyze is the corruption category. It's hard to say what CBP and Border Patrol believe to be corruption. As the former commissioner of CBP Internal Affairs, James Tomczyk, once stated, the agency tries to change what constitutes corruption all the time to try and make their numbers smaller. Another reason why the public cannot trust CBP and Border Patrol numbers on corruption is because they do not consider some of their actions to be corruption, even though they clearly are. We look at the example of the Border Patrol critical incident teams. Those are teams that were designed in the 1980s and the 1990s to intentionally get rid of evidence that did not exonerate their agents before actual criminal investigators could ever get to the scene. It's been documented that in the 3 decades of their existence, these teams prevented most agents from being held accountable for violent use of force violations. So this type of corruption is not even considered corruption, and it's not even counted within these statistics. I think the biggest thing I note from that chart is when you look at the numbers, the overall numbers, you have to realize that at least 2 or more CBP and Border Patrol employees are being arrested every week in the last 9 years. That's pretty bad. To compare Border Patrol agents who are arrested versus the migrants they arrest and how many prior convictions they had, you have to look at percentages. As I said, Border Patrol employees are arrested 5 times more than any other law enforcement group, from the secret illegal cover-up teams to the secret investigations that victims and the public are not allowed to even read, to sealed court documents for agents and officers involved in sexual crimes of fellow co-workers, their own children, co-workers' children, migrants and unaccompanied children in custody. I mean, the list just goes on and on. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say these numbers are just the tip of the iceberg, because CBP and Border Patrol rely on employees to self-report these crimes. And if they're not reported to the agency, then they just don't get counted. So let's look at another graph. So this graph is showing you the same years, 2015. We can't do 2023 because I don't have the exact number of, and this is just Border Patrol. So this is not including CBP, which is at the ports of entry. This is just Border Patrol arrest of Border Patrol agents. On the very first on the very first line shows how much staff every year that they had, and then it shows the number of Border Patrol agents arrested for that year. And it also shows, according to that year, the number of migrants arrested for that year. And then out of those arrests, these are all Border Patrol statistics on Border Patrol arrests. This shows you the criminal migrants out of the total migrants. So you look at 2015, out of 337,000 migrants they arrested crossing in between the ports of entry, then they found 19,117 for 2015. Now, I have taken out the crime of re-entry after deportation. So that means that a migrant has crossed, and when Border Patrol runs the records checks on them, they find that they have already been deported for one reason or another. That is a felony to re-enter the United States after being deported, especially to re-enter the United States illegally. Then that will cause you to do at least a minimum of 2 years, if not more, depending on what your crime was, and the judge, quite frankly. So the reason why I took out re-entry after deport, there's a couple of reasons. I think it's important to pull out the re-entry after deportation convictions because, number one, Border Patrol agents are not going to have that kind of charge. So it's not a fair comparison. So you have to take out the re-entry after deportation convictions, okay? And then you have your actual number of criminal migrants. So the percentage of Border Patrol agents arrested, this is different. This isn't CBP. This is just Border Patrol over the years. This shows they get pretty close to that 1%. You're getting pretty close, but they're not quite there. They always stay below that 1%. Now, the percentage of criminal migrants arrested for those years, that means they crossed the border and they already had a previous conviction. So we knew that they were a criminal migrant based on their prior history. And you can see in 2015, they had 2.82%. So that's higher than what the Border Patrol agents had. So that's good. 2016, 1.41. Border Patrol only had 0.68%. That's good. Same for 2017. The number of criminal migrants arrested by Border Patrol agents is higher than the Border Patrol agents who are committing crimes. That's very good. Border Patrol management was probably pretty happy about the fact that they were arresting more criminals than they were hiring. So that's good. But in 2018, 2019, you start seeing these numbers go up. But you also see, if you look at the criminal migrants arrested, this is the total, and this includes re-entry after deport convictions. You see how it goes up from 2,000 to 10 to 12,000 to 15,000. Why is that? Why is it getting more and more and more? Well, what happened in the Trump administration is they had zero tolerance and they started charging everybody for their first time coming across the border, even if they didn't have a criminal conviction. So what that caused is it causes this bump where it makes it look like they're arresting more criminal migrants coming across the border illegally. But the reality is they are not criminal migrants coming across the border. They were asylum seekers coming across the border without any prior criminal convictions. And yet they were still charging them for that. And that creates what I would call a false statistic in here. And so when you pull those numbers out, then you see the actual real numbers of people who are crossing that did have prior criminal convictions when they crossed the border illegally. And you see that from 2018 to at least 2022 that we have numbers for so far, you can clearly see that Border Patrol agents, on average, are committing more crime than the people that they're apprehending. That's why I say honor first is a lie. If you're new to my podcast or my TikTok videos and so forth, you can see a lot of these diagrams and the statistics and the analysis and a lot of my writings. All the stuff I talk about on video is I've written about. So you can see all that on my website at jimbud.com, and it delves farther into it and has obviously more citations and so forth than I can give on here.